Number 1. The village. It won't ever leave my mind, no matter how many bottles that I down. It won't ever go away. He'll always be with me. It was the year 2001. Me and some old friends had just finished university and organized a trip through Eastern Europe. We all wanted it. The cheap booze, the hot girls, the nightlife, where everyone still seems to be celebrating the collapse of communism. Me, Dan, and Sean were hoping for the week of our young lives. Suggestions on where to go, in terms of the beauty and what else my Windows 98 computer screen could produce on Google Images, would have sat us up for hours drinking Budweiser and arguing over locations. It was finally decided that Bucharest would be our main party destination, but two of my buddies were too broke to pay for the connecting flights from Germany. We decided to train into Romania instead. While at the station bar, we met an American man with a spider tattoo on his arm, who suggests that we stopped off in Budapest for a night in a hotel, as Dan couldn't go on any longer, and quite frankly, I myself had drank too much German beer during the travel. He told us amazing stories of how Budapest has some of the cheapest drinks in Europe, and the bridge looks beautiful at night. We took the train that arrived in the city with our new American friend. We found the cheapest place for less than £5 each for a one night stay. We couldn't say no, it was just too good to refuse. Yeah, sure, the room smelt of hash and booze from the neighboring rooms, but we didn't care. After putting my bags down and saying goodnight to the American, readying our beds for the night, we heard a knock on the door. Assuming it was just a hotel manager or a new friend from across the pond. We opened up to see a man. He was short, with a full beard, smoking a cigarette, and wore a dirty leather jacket. Tourists, my friends, very good. We're sorry, what? Tourists, you're tourists. You come to Hungary for a good time. No, we're going to Romania, actually. Romania? But it's not a good place for you. You men need party place with girls for cheap. All of us were just confused by the man. Who was he, and why was he bothering us? We're sorry, mate. I don't think you have the right idea. We're not interested in that. And fuck you then. You think you can come to my country and just insult me? He stormed off, and we just shrugged it off and slept for the night. The next morning, we awoke as normal, packed up our stuff, and headed down to reception to check out. While I handed in our keys and signed the documents, Sean grabbed and pulled me to one side. It was a policeman taking a statement from the backpackers and fellow tourists. One of the policemen approached us. Have you seen this boy? He went missing last night. Hotel staff saw him going out for a smoke. He handed us the picture, but it was the same gentleman that we met in the German train station, the American man. All of us were in shock. We explained how he met us at the train station and later wandered off drunk to his own room. If you see anything from him, please call this number or email here. The taxicab back to the station was around 35 minutes. Overall, it seemed like seconds. I couldn't get over the fact the man we had just met had gone missing. I'm sure he's just gone and checked in somewhere else. He drank like 6 buds at the station. Nah, you don't just leave somewhere like that. This is really messed up. We bought our tickets to Bucharest and got supplies for the long journey ahead. More beer was needed and surprisingly cheap, so we stocked up well. I quite frankly needed a cigarette after the anxiety that I was facing. We boarded our train, but I couldn't even touch one after thinking of the man in the leather jacket. Our train was long and fell into the night. Once out of the city, the view of the hills and passing station lights drifted me away into a deep sleep. I awoke to a shake. Bro, wake up, please, wake up. It was Dan. He was white as I've ever seen him. It reminded me of when we first tried weed back in the days of being a teenager. What's going on? I asked him. It stopped. And? What did you wake me up for? It's a fucking train. They stop and go. Might be a red light on the tracks. No, you don't understand, you prick. This is the end of the line. We got on the wrong train. I looked over to see an old wooden station sign with the lantern and candlelight illuminating it. I shook Sean to tell him the news, and he angrily shouted out to Dan, who was upset and on the verge of tears that he had led us on the wrong platform. Great. What the hell are we going to do now? We're stuck in Hungary in the middle of God knows fucking where. Where's the driver? I have no idea. All his lights are off in the cabin. Why would he leave us? I don't think he would do that. Let's just get up and look. We checked and the cabin was empty. All the controls and lights were shut off. Nobody was seen. We jumped off the train and walked down the platform, hoping that somebody would tell us what was going on and why we were left abandoned. We found nothing. Not one person in the whole 20 minutes of walking. We're in big trouble. Okay, lads, let's not panic. A station surely means that people are living near, or why else would they build it? Lads, I'm scared. I want to go home. I don't want to go any further. Stop being such a girl. We're fine, okay? See that? I see the candlelight in the distance. We continued to walk out of the station in the direction of a dim light until it got brighter and brighter. It turned out to be a tavern, an extremely old looking one to say the least. We could see a candlelight flickering from the other side of the stained glass patterned windows. We knocked on the door and opened it up. The place was barely occupied, maybe 5 or 6 people scattered around the whole room. We walked into the bar and asked if there were any rooms available. We asked if anyone spoke a good level of English, and if anybody knows what happened to the train driver. Not one answer, just blank stares that make the hair on your arm stand up. You boys looking to party? We heard from behind us. We turned around, and it was him, the bearded man in the leather jacket. He was standing right by the exit that we came in with the same creepy smile that scared the living daylights out of us. Where did you come from? I've always been following you, and now we're gonna party. You boys need to try this. I made it for you. It's good, you'll like it. He walked closer, and we noticed he was carrying a large trash bag with him. Sean sprang towards him with a pint glass ready to smash it over his head, and he stopped and turned over to me. Dude, he made us a pie, and he's carrying vodka. What? I replied. I joined Sean over with the man and confirmed what he had said. The man did, in fact, make us a pie. What? I make this to say sorry for what I said when I'm drinking in the hotel. I'm very bad when I'm drunk, but welcome to Hungary. We were all in awe at the situation. We nearly attacked the man for simply making us a welcome gift. Dan jumped up and shouted at the top of his lungs, I'm not sitting down and eating that. The driver's gone missing and everyone in this tavern is a fucking freak. What's going on? Driver go home. To sleep after arriving. He live in a house 10 minutes from here. You stay for the night. We get drunk and we eat pie, the bearded man informed us. We had no other choice but to accept his offer and sit at one of the tables. As soon as our asses hit the seat, the tavern seemed to go back to normal. People began to speak with one another, drinks pouring, cigarettes lit up, you name it. It all happened in the space of 30 seconds. The strange bearded man actually turned out to be pretty normal. From his stories about his wife and children to life under Soviet rule, he was just like any other man his age. We drank and ate the somewhat bitter tasting pie until closing time. We went upstairs, and he arranged our beds with the tavern manager. Slept like a baby, awoke with a raging hangover. He was waiting outside. When we walked out of the building, he guided us to the train station. He told us the right line to jump on and what station to take to transfer us to Romania. Turns out, the same driver that took us there turned up and said he was sorry, but he didn't want to wake us up. There was no need to worry about theft on the train due to the area being so unpopulated, as translated by our bearded friend. He gave me a gift wrapped in a red cloth before we boarded the train as it was pulling into the platform. This is for you, my friend. It was a great party with all 4 of you. This gift will always be a part of you. I bid you a goodbye. I didn't notice at first due to the raging hangover, but Sean seemed very edgy and nervous. What's the matter, bud? You feel sick? No. What's up then, you dick? He said the 4 of us, looking at me with extreme confusion. Who else was with us last night? Nobody. I looked down in my lap and slowly unraveled the red cloth. My heart pounded fast as I read the words American apple pie, handwritten on a note next to the last part of the pie left in the tin. The crust had a spider tattoo bedded into the pastry. We ate him. Number 2. What makes you shiver from fear? Loud noises in the night? Finding your belongings in random places where they shouldn't be? I have a theory that while the great H.P. Lovecraft was right about the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is the fear of the unknown, the most frightening, greatest terror one can encounter is the disharmony. Finding things being in places at times where and when they were not supposed to be. You know what I mean. Seeing a funny clown in a dark alley at night. Discovering a stranger on a photo you took with some friends. Hearing a gentle lullaby in the dark night when you're home alone. A few days ago, on October 31st, I had experienced this type of fear on my own skin. You might be thinking, oh yeah, another Halloween story, but I have to disappoint you. You see, I'm Hungarian, and I currently live in Hungary with my girlfriend. We have no such thing as Halloween here. November 1st is a national holiday, the Day of the Dead, where we go to the cemetery and place candles on the graves of our lost loved ones while remembering them. But no trick or treating, no pumpkins, no costumes. I see how this can be horrifying on its own, but as people say, missing something doesn't hurt when it wasn't there in the first place. But in recent years, thanks to the internet, the influence of Western media, Halloween has slowly started to sweep into Hungary. It's no longer strange to see bags of candy with ghosts, skulls, and vampires in their packaging in supermarkets around the end of October. The majority of pubs, clubs, cafes plan some elaborate Halloween events. There's even a trend among families with smaller children who create trick or treat networks so their kids can go and collect candy just as they've seen in their favorite cartoons. It's basically a subculture and nothing compared to the real deal, but it's a nice touch if you live here and, like me, have been astonished by this strange festival since you first saw it mentioned in some form. In the past few years, at an annual ritual for the night, with some friends we traveled to a small town where we could rent the local movie theater for a very cheap price, and we spent the entire night watching classic horror movies. This year, however, I ended up so overworked and so near to a very ugly burnout, I decided to skip it and stay home, maybe watch a horror movie with my girlfriend, and go to bed early. It went relatively well despite the fact that I missed my buddies and our annual ritual, but still, getting some rest was better than anything I could have imagined, at least until our doorbell started to ring. You see, we rent an apartment in a closed building. You can only get in if you know the code of the specific apartment, or if you called one of the apartments from the gate phone and somebody let you in. There's very little chance of a stranger getting in unnoticed by any of the inhabitants, and this gives you a sense of security. But none of your neighbors ever did something like this before. I remember getting out of bed and hurrying to the door, afraid that there might have been an accident and there's somebody looking for help. But before unlocking the door, I've called out, "Who's there?" A few moments passed, and I almost wanted to ask again when a small, strange voice called from the outside of the door, "Trick or treat." I swear my heart stopped for a few moments, like a block of ice. I'm a very paranoid person, and a few years ago I lived in a similar apartment building where one of the tenants was insane. Insane enough to give everybody the creeps, but still harmless enough to be spared whenever someone called the police on him. Moving away from there was like getting a breath of fresh air. So the first thing that came to my mind when I heard the voice was, no, please God, not another neighbor like that. I slowly moved to the eye hole and took a look, and there he was. A person around my height was standing in front of the door, with the lights on in the stairway, so I could take a good look at him. He wore casual black clothing and had a cheap Halloween mask, the likes of which you can find on eBay for a few bucks. He had a yellow plastic bag in one of his hands. If this would have happened somewhere else, where Halloween was officially celebrated, it could have been the most natural thing. A poor trick-or-treater who arrived a few hours too late. But seeing a masked guy in front of your door was without a doubt the most frightening thing I'd ever laid my eyes on. Was he somebody from this building? Maybe one of my friends pulling a joke on me. I heard my girlfriend approaching behind me, starting to ask who it was when I signaled her with my hand to be quiet. Then the voice came again. Trick or treat. I could see the fright in her eyes too. It became even more worse than I realized. This wasn't a child. That masked guy must have been around my age, if not older, and he stood only 2 feet away from me, barred only by a weak, bolted door which should have been changed like a decade ago. I finally mustered up enough courage to open my mouth and answer him. Go away. Do you know what the fuck time it is? I tried to sound as tough as possible, but I don't think that I was able to hide my fear. As if he didn't even hear me, came the words for the third time. Trick or treat. Go away, I'm calling the police. As an answer, he tried to handle the door. My girlfriend screamed. Maybe I did too. Didn't you hear me? Get away or I'll give you a treat to remember, you freak. The handle became still. I heard a step from behind the door. No, no treats. I didn't dare answer. This guy must have been drunk or insane. No matter what I said, he probably would have kept asking for treats until I opened the door for him. How did he enter the building? Was one of the entrances left open, or did he slip in earlier that day and hid somewhere until he could pull this sick prank at night? Then I heard a few more steps as he walked away and up to the stairs, probably to repeat his little game with the other attendants. I rushed to my phone immediately and called the police. Since I was the only one to call them, there was no harm done. They just promised me to send one of their patrols over and take a look around. After hanging up, I cursed. The majority of the tenants in this building are old people. What if somebody let him in after being awakened in the middle of the night? I checked the locks on the door and went back to our room with my girlfriend, but not before picking up some stuff from the kitchen, a broom and a few sharp knives. I didn't dare to let go of my cell phone, nor did we make any attempt to go back to sleep. We kept listening and waiting, either for the police car or some noise from the upper levels. After nothing happened for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I felt my weariness getting the better of me, I pushed a small wardrobe in front of our bedroom door, and then fell into the bed and let the world of sleep swallow me in. We woke after 10. My first thing to do was get up, draw back the shades of our window, and take a look at the parking lot. No police cars, no ambulance. Nothing that would have signaled some terrible happening in the night. I felt like heavy stones just fell off of my heart. I removed the barricade and stepped out into our hallway, and then I stopped after looking around. My blood froze. You see, I know a lot of Halloween costumes. I know the practical jokes and pranks that happen to people who refuse to give anything to the sugar-hungry trick-or-treaters, toilet papers, eggs, etc. None of this would have been frightening had we been living in a place where Halloween was celebrated. But the fact is we don't, and there are broken eggshells and roll of toilet paper laying everywhere inside our apartment, with our front door unlocked and wide open. Number 3. My grandpa was your typical grandpa, sweet and honest. He was a good man. He passed away in 2010. He always told us about our heritage and who we were back in the day. My grandfather was from Budapest, Hungary, and there was always a story he told me that gave me the chills. Here's his story. He was 13 in Budapest. They lived off their land and had a farm basically in the middle of nowhere, which my grandfather said he didn't mind it, he actually loved it. But in the summer of 1948 it was different. It was hot and getting late. My grandfather and great-grandfather were working hard in the field, checking over the crops, putting up the fence to prevent animals in the woods from destroying and eating it. My grandfather was startled when the work mules started kicking and fussing. My dad didn't understand. He never acted so stressed out when absolutely nothing was wrong. My grandfather looked at his father, who was staring blankly ahead. He was going to ask what he was looking at when he looked. A woman in dark red with a veil over her face was slowly walking in the field towards them, which is odd. They had been in the field all day and never seen her. Hello, my great-grandfather yelled, but nothing. Then he said, hello, an American. She stopped immediately and ran towards them fast. My grandfather said he swears her feet weren't even touching the ground, and then she laughed while she was running. Now, this field's about 2 football fields long, and she ran it within seconds, stopped in front of them about 5 feet away. My grandfather was so scared. He said he was holding onto my great-grandfather's legs. He could feel his blood boil from fear. He had never seen anything like her, or that before. She spoke in Hungarian. The boy, he must come with me, I need him. The gypsies need him. My great-grandfather snapped back. You have no powers here. You leave now. She laughed, and my grandfather said he looked up, still holding his father's leg. Her eyes were white and her hair was black, and her veil looked as if her tongue was hitting it the whole time. She looked down at him and laughed, and then said softly, in a hiss almost, You. He is with us. He is here. She then moved towards my grandfather, and my great-grandfather pushed her back hard. He picked up my grandfather and ran. My grandfather said he looked back to see her standing in the field waving. Her veil was off, and her tongue was so long it looked like a snake. My grandfather put his head in my great-grandfather's shoulder and didn't look back towards the field again until they reached the house. Great-grandfather was heaving and trying to catch his breath when they both turned towards the field, and there was nothing there. Completely empty besides the wood and tools. They both agreed not to tell my grandmother before catching their breath and waiting to go in. They both turned around, and on the metal bell on the front porch my grandmother used several times to call them in for dinner with was a red veil swinging in the breeze.